Good evening, friends. This is Peter Colla with Spiritual Therapies with Peter and Anna Colla. And if you've seen me before, you may have seen me on David Nino Rodriguez, a good friend of mine, Charlie Ward, Nicholas Van Yemen. I've also been on with other people, David Corson, and with Prime Minister. And hopefully I'll be on some other shows sometime in the future. I would really like to get on with Mel K, or maybe even have a chance to talk with Gene Decode Jacko. But we'll see how it goes. Anyways, today I'm going to do a show in response to the last one that David Nino Rodriguez did with Juan O Seven yesterday. And specifically to speak further, because he had spoken about this and the shedding and the finding of trace elements, etc., in our blood as a result of directly receiving this or even in coming in contact. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit from a spiritual therapeutic point of view, because that's what I do. Spiritual therapies with Peter and Anna Colla. Before we get started, real quick, I want to show you, I have started doing the spiritual application of putting God back into the therapeutic practice. I have been a practicing medical professional for 35 years, evaluating and treating thousands of patients, supervising staffs of 150 or more. About 15 years ago, I started putting God back into the therapeutic process, and he opened my eyes to some miracles that occurred because of it. So I wrote it down and wrote it in my blog, paulopeter.com. You're welcome to check that out. You can, and I took those blogs and I put it in the form of a book called Heal Yourself for God's Sake. And that is basically just a tabulation of these different things I observed by treating in godly fashion and also correlating it to the Word of God. This is all the Word of God, Jesus Christ. So you, if you want to know how to do it yourself and apply those things and reach out for that healing that is available to all of us, you merely just need to reach out and grab it. And I explain how others did it, and if they can do it, you can do it. And in the second book I wrote, I started asking God how it works on an elemental basis. I wrote this book, Quantum Ascension, last year. And that explains it so that if you understand it, if you understand the processes, it's easier to understand and visualize in your own life the solutions. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because we're going to delve a little bit more in depth into disease. Specifically, the disease that we have to take this for, not particularly that one, but many diseases, and what we can do, understanding maybe some truths about disease. Okay, so I'm going to call this one an in-depth examination into disease or dis-ease. We all know what we've been taught regarding diseases, that they cause pretty much any and all issues of our modern day afflictions, and are linked in one way or another to the causes of death today. As a matter of fact, it is pretty commonly known in the medical community that technology has kind of eliminated a lot of the more drastic forms of death, being attacked by animals, etc., being exposed to the nature and freezing to death, or getting heat stroke or whatever. And so a lot of has been replaced with almost an infinite amount of diseases that have suddenly popped up. Diseases of everything. Diseases of your joints, diseases of your head, diseases of your mental condition, diseases of your bowels, of your stomach, of your, skin, all kinds of cancers and all kinds of different systemic things, allergic diseases and neurological diseases and all of these different things. And they're all given these names. Interesting. But they're all thrown into the category, for the most part, in diseases. Yet with my increased experience in healthcare over the last 35 years, it has become increasingly evident that more emphasis has been placed on decreasing symptoms of an ever-increasing assortment of diseases with less applications of treatment to the plausible causes themselves. In other words, there's been more and more emphasis on treating the symptoms and not being concerned as much as the possible cause. Oftentimes saying, well, it's genetic. You were born with it, just like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. You get older and you can expect arthritis. We're going to talk about that in a minute. With this scamdemic and its seemingly infinite array of hypothesized yet never isolated variants, or the many ludicrous mandates against something that had a 0% death rate, except of course among those who already happened to have comorbidity, the death rate seemed absolute. What is comorbidity? Comorbidity is when somebody has a number of things already wrong with them or afflicted with, not wrong with them, but afflicted with, that they can die from. Cancer, old age, heart problems, COPD, common among the elderly. And then suddenly they pass away and it's been labeled this, comorbid. They had other things that they were likely to die from anyways and passed away. And so the cause was automatically put on that. We know that already. That information has already come out. I don't have to go over it. It is worldwide. I know many medical people whose medical staff was ordered to change records, to change death certificates, to change these things, to put other diagnosis, this diagnosis basically, when in many cases they were tested for it, and B, they didn't have any symptoms other than just having it listed. Now we know that the insurance industry, aka the big pharma, was promoting this. They wanted as many cases as they could. You would think, well, maybe because they wanted to justify, selling this to every person in the world. Makes a little sense from a monetary standpoint. We'll get into that a little bit here in a bit. Of course, there has been also an increased doomsday narrative worldwide against something that proved to have all the infectious mortality in the entire population, with the exception of the elderly, as perhaps overdosing from a bad fortune cookie. As a matter of fact, little children, I remember at the beginning, they said they had no chance of getting it. Yet they still had to do this. And now they're even talking about this. Yet they have no chance of getting it. And there is no chance of even dying from it, but they have to have it. That just doesn't seem okay. Yet, be as it may, for the first time in history, every country on the planet not only unilaterally decided to panic in fear, lay down any and all hostilities, but lock everybody up, put these on, laid all hope, resources, and prayers on this long before anything could be tested, yet alone any true virus could be ever isolated. Yet they were quick to go and get something that was supposedly going to make you so that you wouldn't get it. Yet they hadn't isolated it. Now, before I did physical therapy, I did immunology. And one of the things that we did was there are different ways that they can isolate these things by taking someone who's infected and they run it through various columns and different kinds of analysis techniques in order to isolate the compound so that they know what they're dealing with. And then they can take that isolated compound and supposedly put an inert form of it into your body so that your body then will build up resistance and fight it itself. That's the theory. Okay. But if they don't isolate it, if they can't find it in anybody, then what are they testing to, unless they have something already in hand, which is possible. We've had a lot of theories about it being produced in a lab, weaponized, and I think the more and more that this stuff comes out and the more and more that becomes pretty much accepted fact, they didn't seem to be hiding it anymore, that now it becomes clear that there is a sort of nefarious kind of agenda there. At least if they produced it, they were producing it for a reason. Oh, well, we were producing it so that we knew it was coming. Somehow we knew it was coming, so we produced it so we could start working on this beforehand. That's what we did. I used to think that the ridiculousness that insurance agencies and big pharma would treat the rich different than the poor, even though I saw examples of that in my own practice. People that came from rich part of towns would get complete approval of their care, while people from the poor parts of town would have it denied with the same symptoms, the same production of care, the same, even the same insurance. But yet they would unilaterally deny people demographically. Because, and I found this out, I actually treated one of the insurance ladies who used to do the approvals. And she said she had to quit because she just couldn't do it anymore. They were told to deny. And then they would look into certain demographics of people who would fight. And if 10 people out of 50 will fight in a particular zip code, then they won't deny there. But if they only have 1 out of 50 in another zip code, then they'll deny everybody, because they know that the averages are, even if they lose the 1, they gain all the other money. But then, as things began to ramp up, it became clear that even the rich were not free of the dangers of the pestilence brought forth upon us by those all carrying, and yet not to forget, all-knowing industries that don't give a rat's ass about anyone except themselves. AKA, they seem to do, the rich were getting these things just as bad, just as many diseases as the rest. and whose agenda has become more evident recently as to not particularly wanting to share this world has given to all of us, that God has given to all of us, with anyone except themselves, and maybe a few minions they hold back for the further propagation of their wants and desires, aka the slaves. It has become more and more evident with all the evidence out there that there is an agenda to depopulate. It is out there. They're not hiding it. Put it on a Georgia guidestones, think stones. Put it in agendas that are voted on by the United Nations and approved. And yet they throw that in our face and they say, well, we, on one side, they say they want to do this and help us and or depopulate it. And on the other side, they say, but we're the ones who are going to help you with this. It's so clear that our well-being is not their intent, but actual malice seems to be the proposed agenda. And then have the audacity to use their own media puppets, spewing their propaganda as truths. Don't believe your eyes, but believe what we tell you. That's what they say. Don't believe what you see. Don't believe people falling over and young people, athletes having heart attacks, young people spontaneously aborting babies. They had the slowest amount of births in United Kingdom in recent history the last year or last few months. And it's all because of this. And yet they won't even examine it. They won't even talk about it in the media. You have to go to other medias, alternative medias like Mel and Charlie Ward and David Nino Rodriguez to get truth. It's like, it's unheard of. And then even they have to dance around with what they say because they might get their channel taken down. Well, take my channel down, that's fine, I don't care. So they'll say, let's go on a different channel. Don't believe your eyes, believe what we tell you. Proven false numbers, falsified diagnosis reporting to jack up the numbers, and ludicrous attempts to hide the true nature of the ingredients, as well as the expected outcomes of these. They're supposed to be in the packaging. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I have never heard of a single product that is produced for health that doesn't have a list of not only what's in it, but what are the expected outcomes and possible contraindications, so that if you happen to have a contraindication, you know what it is and you can stop. But this one doesn't. In the recent years, especially the last few under our greatest and I believe only true president, Donald Trump, the only one we've had, the only true one we've had since Kennedy, that is. Not that I knew Kennedy, I was born when he died, but maybe I'll meet his son one of these days, if he's still alive. I've written about him in a few of my blogs when he decides to come back. A steady and exponentially increasing flood of revealed hidden information seems to have bubbled to the surface, with no less volume than the recent lava bellowing out of the La Palma volcano itself. It's been exponential, the amount of information that has been coming, almost too much. People about everything, about the poisons in the air, poisons in the blood, water, in the food, the different things that they put in the food, the curses in restaurants and different things that they do, and how it's just, and how these different companies are all owned by the same people. Mel was talking about it today. All the same companies, all owned by the same, one or two companies, and nobody knows who owns them. There's these top people. I want to call them people. My wife doesn't call them people. Information coming to the surface regarding such thing as patents of the majority of diseases we are currently suffering from. Patents that have been, these things have been patented way back in the 1920s and 30s. Diseases. Well, wait a minute, how do you patent a disease? So if you come up with a chemical compound or a nefarious decision to put a number of products into place that causes a reaction, that you then will come in with a medication that will solve that problem for the person. It will not solve it, but you'll treat it. And then give it a nice little name, cancer, and then patent it. Funny thing, recently they had a dig outside the Giza pyramid area, and they found all this big burial thing, and they had all thousands of mummies. So they thought, just for maybe shits and giggles, I don't know, we're going to go ahead and analyze these, do some tests that they can do to determine the cause of death. None of them had cancer. Very few had any diseases at all. Any modern diseases. Most of them had died either of some kind of injury, blunt trauma, or old age. That's kind of strange. Was it healthier back then? Didn't have running water? What? Maybe, you know. Yeah, all the pollution, that's what the problem is. Yeah, okay. Anyway, especially in regards information coming to the surface regarding such things as patents for the majority of diseases we are currently suffering from. Diseases being patented, like corona and some of these others, patented, especially in regards to cancer. Maybe not only fabricated in lab, thus the need for a patent, or pieced together through various components seeded into us through various systems we ourselves pay for. Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean we pay for it? Well, don't we pay for our food? Don't we pay for our water? Don't we even pay for Facebook and all of this other stuff? Don't we pay for that? And then they go and they do that to us when we were the ones that funded them. Yeah, the government. And they're doing this stuff when they have their jobs to thank for us. Our work produces the money that pays the taxes that they use to fund all of these things. And they sit back and act as if it's theirs. Especially our foods, our waters, and other environmental stay produced for our common consumption, aka poisons, Roundup, stuff like that. It's like ridiculous that it has poisons in it that they know can harm us, but they put it in there or leave it in there anyway. This left me particularly perplexed, considering I'd lost more than a few loved ones to this so-called patented, yet now redefined as ticking time bomb or hidden genetic anomalies. See, that's what I was taught in school what this stuff was, and that arthritis, perfect example, was an attack of the arthro. It's an itis. It's an infection or a momentary irritation of the arthro, and then the resulting response. Your body responds by swelling, pain receptors go off, and your body reacts. Thus, you want to reduce the swelling after the attack is gone. If you reduce the swelling and the football player goes right back out into the thing, and then he has a risk of hurting himself worse. That's why he can't do that. It has to be reinforced. And reduce the swelling, but you gotta reinforce it with taping and other things. Make sure he doesn't hurt himself worse or get hurt worse with another attack, another helmet to the knee. So we have these different so-called things that have been redefined. Suddenly it's, well, you get that because of your genetics. Yet they've never been able to find a genetic code that matches with heart disease. They've never been able to match up certain qualities of genetics with certain things. Why? Maybe because they don't exist. You can't find any of these isolated. Why? Maybe. Why can't they find them? Supposedly got plenty of dead people to test. Why can't they isolate one? Maybe it doesn't exist. I find it interesting. I like to take this stuff and go back to the Word of God and ask, how does it work, God? How does this work when we're fighting these afflictions? What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. God will never give you anything that will happen to you that he doesn't give you the means to overcome it. He doesn't give it to you. You don't have to go praying to the insurance agency to let them please give me something to help me so I can get over this. That's not what he says in his word. He says he will give it to us, but we have to ask. Okay? And in the Word of God, in Exodus, way back there, way back in Genesis, Exodus, right at the beginning, and said, Exodus 15. I don't read a lot of the Bible, but I'm going to read a lot out, but I'm going to do it this time. David did it the other day. Kind of cool. I liked it. Exodus 15, and said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. If we listen to God, if we turn our head to God and try to do right, nobody's perfect, but you try, and listen to his commandments. Don't kill people, don't steal, don't lie, cheat, covet your neighbor's wife. Try to keep his statutes. I will put none of these diseases upon thee that I put upon the Egyptians. He put it on Egyptians. He gave them a lot of choice, he gave them a lot of warning. The dumbass wouldn't listen. I mean, after the frogs, after the water, after the locusts, the fire coming down, burning the crops, you think you're a little out of your game here? A little outmatched? Anyway, I guess some people are slow learners. As we have attempted in the earlier videos, and I will without trying to sound too rhetorical, that we indeed do reside in an end times war between good and evil, and thus between God and agents of darkness. Since these situations or battles are primarily fought in the realm of the spiritual, it is most advantageous to examine them from a spiritual perspective, thus shedding light onto the scene, revealing truth, and allowing us through comprehension and gained wisdom, see, thus believe, and ultimately realize or make real with our eyes our victory promised us in the Word of God. God promises us this stuff, and if he promises, he keeps all of his promises. He can promise to bring you an oasis of water, but if you don't go over there and drink it, it's your fault. The very word disease can be broken down into two subwords: dis-ease. We all know what ease is, and when learning, understanding, or speaking of the bodily structures, for the most part, just about every function of the body is essentially easiest to understand when looking added in the form of a balanced systems. That's the way it's taught. It's always taught in systems: endocrine system, neurological system, digestive system, muscle function system, mitochondrial system, energy producing system, etc., 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 acid base system, all in systems, little balances. That's how it's taught. Makes it easy for the student to understand. So that he understands what he's doing. Because if he doesn't understand what he's doing, it makes it hard to practically apply it to a person and say, well, I'm going to apply cold to reduce swelling if you don't know why and what it's doing. Well, how does the cold reduce the swelling? I just feel cold. Then you can explain it. Explain the capillary dilation, etc. So you explain that. That's the systems and what takes place, what chemicals are stimulated. Why, when you rub the hand, or when the mother kisses the baby's hand, when it had his hand stuck in the door and it hurts, and mommy kisses it, does the pain go away? Why? It has to do with gate theory, they call it, another system. The person cannot feel good and pain at the same time. Physically impossible. And since good overpowers the pain sensation, simple as that. Simple, understanding that now. So if you ever have a sore shoulder, give it some love. Give the arm some love and watch the pain vanish. I didn't want to use the word this time. And I'm going to tell you why right now. So for the most part, just about every function of the body is essentially easiest understood when looked at in the form of balanced system. This would make sense when understanding the majority of afflictions that occur against the body if we see them as interrupting or agitating the balance of these systems and thus placing them into a temporary state of unease. I didn't want to use dis-ease, unease. Then it begins to make also a bit more sense to assume if a nefarious enemy wishes us to remain in this unbalanced state or a condition of unease, then temporarily reducing our symptoms but doing nothing to solve the issue causing the chaos in the first place would seem the reasonable objective from someone who hates our guts and doesn't want us to get better. So that makes sense why they want you. They just treat the symptoms and not the cause, because they don't want you to get better. They want you to stay in a position of imbalance, unease. Unease with the function of your back, causing pain in your back. Unease with the function of your lymph. Suddenly your everything's swelling. Unease with the function of the reproduction of even the cells that can cause cancer. Unease with the function of your eyes. And people have problems suddenly, eye problems, eye disease. Function of their brain, function of their hands, a function of their nerves, function. It's all based on functions. They get disrupted. They are put in a position of unease by the attacker, by the attacking agent. The agent disrupts, like arthritis. The majority of arthritic issues, when spontaneously occurring, not talking about trauma, I'm talking about because they take in too many acidic foods, AKA gout, the acidic situation causes an imbalance in the chemical balance in the area of the joint, which causes then inflammation as a reaction because it's poison there. It's trying to make a distance between the poison and the joint or the arthro, the cartilage, whatever. And thus that swelling also producing other chemicals that are warning the body, hey, something's going on here. Then that you respond as, they feel that as pain. The pain is not the enemy. The pain is the warning. Yes, it's annoying, but so is a fire alarm is annoying. But you need it to let you know when there's a fire going on. Pain is the same thing. Swelling is the same thing. Letting you know something's going on. It's not a disease. It's an unease. Okay. Interesting, as we further examine the word dis, there's a Roman god of the underworld credited with chaos and confusion called Dis. It's called Dispater, but we'll just call him Dis, because he was called Dis. Without getting into too much of a lecture about some demigod or demons in hell, it's worth noting that in the spiritual realm, witches and warlocks speak the names of the spirits they wish to invoke in the hopes to further their causes in the supernatural. That's absolutely true. And since we have recently come to know that the majority of our language derives from not only its Latin Roman base, which we already knew, but also from a great deal of pagan cult influence. This has recently been revealed. One can assume that in every case where the prefix dis is attached, a clear negative intent, there's a tag, least from the pure meaning of the word negatively assumed or wished for in this case or in its use. Disorganize, disassociate, disable, dis-ease, disgrace, discard. Dis is the Roman god of chaos. What did I say up here? Chaos and chaos and what did I say here? I missed it here. The confusion. Okay. He's not a great demonic god like the Prince of Persia or something like that. But he's a little guy that can do all kinds of little mischievous things. So when they put that dis onto things, and we repeat it, disease, 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 we start claiming disease, dis-ease in ourselves, which may not even be a dis-ease or a germ or whatever. It could just be an ill-intended chemical that has been cursed to do something in the supernatural against us. Following what I'm saying? So here we go again. Dis-ease, all of these afflictions, books and books of them, all comfortably labeled diseases and then thrown out among the masses as something not only to be feared, but something we mere mortals have absolutely no control over, because they, for the most part, cannot be seen, felt, tasted, smelled, or even sensed. Yet because of their vast power and infectious dread or inescapable contraction probability, we must go again to the experts that have taught us all of their existence for the only possible solution to the disease that they make up. And then they say, it's coming, it's coming. The Bananarama variant and the Pluto variant is coming from Pluto. It's actually so funny that it's almost sad. All right. we must go again to the experts that have taught us of their existence for the only possible solution to this dreaded plague we have seen or have resided within us or around us, because everybody knows God created all this stuff, us included, and then just left us to sit out waiting for it to explode like some dried up piece of dynamite baking in the Arizona sun. I don't think so. We are created in the image of God. And God would not create us with time bomb flaws. That is a lie. They are putting these components of dynamite into us, or seeding it, and then they propagate it with a curse. That is their intent, to take things, like I said in my last video, things that are inert by nature, and giving them a nefarious sort of intention. Take this little bottle here, my alkaline water that I like to drink because it's naturally bicarbonated. I like my pasta and different things, and my diet is probably my food. My wife doesn't like to use the word diet because it has dye in it, D-I-E. So we don't, my feast that I like a little more than I should. I'm not letting you see that part hidden. But this bottle has sodium, not sodium, mainly calcium and magnesium bicarbonate. Look on the back, find bottles that are naturally carbonated. They'll have magnesium and calcium bicarbonate. This is naturally alkaline, because bicarbonate soda is an alkaline. Anybody who's went through chemistry, I was a chemist. Okay, I did chemistry part. Major in pre-med chemistry major. Chemistry, they have that little eyeball station in the corner. If you get anything in your eyes, over to the eyeball station, because primer, it was going to most likely be acid, because if it's anything else, you don't feel it. It's very painful. Throw the powder in the eyes. Sodium bicarbonate. Bicarbonate soda. It neutralizes the acid. There you go. Neutralizes the acid in your body. I drink 1 or 2 of these a day. Now, take this great bottle, and you can do the Marsara Mudo, and you can bless it with some good. We talked about that previous video. I'm not going to get into it. But if someone came along and took this bottle and decided to use it against me and hit me with it, this bottle suddenly becomes a weapon. Same bottle, same created inert structure by God. Glass doesn't have the ability to transmit, but the water does. But here, it can be used for nefarious purposes. That's what I think they do with their curses and their intent. Let's go on a little further. And thus, if we believe something, especially if we speak it continually, it will manifest into reality. Sound created the universe. Sound recreates it continually in our own universes. So if we continuously claim this stuff that might be afflicting us, and we start calling it a disease, then we, in fact, have the ability to manifest it in our own universes. The universe of Peter Colla did, universe of David Nino Rodriguez, universe of Ana Colla, my beautiful wife. Oh, by the way, if you ever want to join that Patriots movement of David Nino Rodriguez, you could meet. My wife is one of his main people that does that, Ana, and you get to talk to her. You think I'm a patriot. You haven't met a patriot till you met her. She's a patriot. She put Juan O Seven in his place, I'll tell you that. She's really a patriot. Anyway, so much has been spoken recently regarding particular dis-ease And the proposed remedy that has been offered up to somehow stop something that, by the way, has yet to date been isolated. There seems to be more and more evidence flowing to the surface regarding the nefarious nature of many of the components inside of this. One of them is the presence of graphene. I think I can say graphene, pencil lead graphene hydroxide. Graphene is a common component of pencils. Yeah, it's no secret that pencils have graphene. Graphene. And while the pencil, it does make the pencil its dark or black color. I have known many a kid to have a pencil or two in his mouth while he ever worrying about ever getting sick. But there again, those pencils probably were not cursed. Spike this and spike that, all with the mentioned possible effects of when combined with other components, either in this or presented from other trusting sources, seem to have no good purpose for being there other than to just a possible dubious effect that now to them who put them there in the first place know. So those spike things and the graph pencil lead things, it has been also come to pretty much to the common knowledge that it's not just in this that has the graphene, it's been in other things. And they have been put in our foods, maybe even for a decade. Other places, maybe even in our air and our water supply, etc. But here again, now we have this fear coupled with the fact that this stuff has been put out there. And people, they want to trust this, but they can't. So many people in the world don't want to do it because they're afraid of what they believe they've been told that's in it. And it's come from many sources, so it's not like, and they don't even really deny it. That's the really funny thing. Why should they? They like the fear. Fear draws attack. Now listen. Fear draws attack. Like an animal in the forest. If you're in the forest, I don't care how many bullets you have. If you're afraid, that animal's going to attack. It's a natural, and it's one of those laws of nature, because these creatures, these spirits, they love that, and that's what they want. They want the people of the world to be afraid. That's what they want. They feed on it. They feed on that fear. And since their presence, I'm talking about these nefarious chemicals, then heavy metals, cadmium, all of these different things that really are not supposed to be in any of those things. As a matter of fact, you look on the CDC website, it says that any of these, two things that cannot be in them. It's right there on the site. They cannot have live tissue of any type, so no live organisms, and they cannot have any heavy metals. Actually, they can't have any toxins of any type. But yet, there are toxins, heavy metals, and even they found, like I said in my last video, about those protozoans that are in there that could cause all kinds of issues. Okay. Again, when backed by a curse, and then you've got somebody who's afraid, and the animal attacks. And since their presence has been validated through multiple sources, it would seem that that the very fact that the ingredients and their very inclusion is kept from us by the not so obvious tactic of just not including any ingredient list at all with these packages. It even makes it more obvious to me. I mean, well, maybe We just won't include any ingredients this time, for the first time in history. So what do we do? What do we do? The good part. The spiritual therapies with Peter and Nicole. When I go and I have someone come in my office with an issue, we don't only examine the physical, the experiential, but we examine the spiritual. Why? Why this joint? Why it happened at this time? What were you doing at this time? What were you thinking? What were you busy with? What were you fearing? That opens the door to understanding the spiritual side of the attack. When they realize and put real eyes onto the problem, the spirit has to be driven away. Laws of God cannot be broken. Laws of God cannot be broken. And one of the first ones is shine a light and darkness flees. And he created light, and darkness gazed upon it and understood it not, and fled. I love that. And that's what we use. We use those laws. We use these weapons that God has given us. Well, why would God need to give you a weapon? Why not just do it himself? Why? Because it's free will. We have the free will to follow God or to follow man, to ask him for a solution or to beg a solution from the big pharma. Ask them, please give me help, please. God's just saying, well, look, just ask me, just ask, you know? So what do we do? Well, let's examine it from the spiritual. And yes, Juan O Seven, I love Juan O Seven, and Nino, my brother, did mention recently in an interview that with Nino, the possibility of some kind of cutting edge technology using nuclear physicists that can identify the particles and then extract them. Nice. Nice if you can afford to driving a Aston Martin and have cutting edge friends in the back of your pocket like nuclear physicists, or can afford them. But unfortunately for the rest of us, as Nino, not Dino, did I say Dino? I better cut that out of there. Nino, as Nino said so correctly, not every one of us has the leisure of having such a benefit at hand. I love Nino like that, because the guy's a champion boxer. You don't become a world champion and not be set. And then he's doing really well with his videos and all of this stuff. But yet he always takes the side of the regular guy. He always like, wait a minute, Juan. What about the rest of the guys? Not everybody can afford a nuclear physicist, and even if they could, what about them guys? Juan didn't really have an answer for that. I do. I got an answer. Because see, God doesn't just do that. He clearly says in his word, he will never bring a challenge for you to overcome that he doesn't give you the solution for if you look to him. That doesn't mean you have to go to a nuclear physicist. No, it's nice if you can. You can afford it, go. It's a quick, easy, and pretty sound way to do it. But God doesn't require you to go to the nuclear physicist. He will give you what you need. And I happened to. So I went that night. I said, okay, God. By the way, this was pretty interesting, is after that David Nino Rodriguez, I had spent the day treating some patients of my own. And they had recently received their boosters. And boy, when I got home, I had the worst attack of head. I mean, it was just, oh, and I had to lay down and I couldn't even sleep. I just touched my head. So I started praying to God to take this away from me, as I do, using touch and other things that I have tried in the past with patients that works. There are many ways to treat touch, light, sound, fasting, water, different kinds of foods, different kinds of herbs, plants, different things like that. There's many, many ways of treating God. As many as God is, he gives all of this abundance. He gives that many different ways you can treat yourself. Many ways. It's all in this. A few. In this book, Heal Yourself. I'm actually working on another book called Treat Yourself, for God's sake. Not ready yet, but that's what it's going to be called. Treat yourself, for God's sake, because you'll do different ways you can treat yourself. Yeah. Anyway, so Juan O Seven likes, one of the things that we have studied in the past, and even some of my videos, is likes, heal likes, or likes, treat likes. It is the basis of homeopathy. So basically, to make a long story short, they take water, and if you want to treat somebody with, let's say, arsenic poisoning, they take water that has been identified with arsenic, a very, very small amount of water, arsenic. So the water knows what to work on. And so people take this water and it cures them of arsenic poisoning, cobra poisoning, lead poisoning, all different. You go over to these homeopathic shops in Holland, where I went to school, and the walls are filled with these different vials, little vials of different waters, all different things, different ailments that they use, likes, cure likes. Now, how does that apply? Well, just so happens I got up and I had this horrible, it was hurting my head, this attack. And all of my touching and stuff, and I could feel it leave here, but then it was like in the base of my neck. And all I could think about were those spike things and graphene shedding stuff. I really thought that maybe that happened to me. Okay. I'm laying there on the couch and I pray to God. And I ask him, what can I do? And he showed me, have you ever heard of activated charcoal? Activated charcoal and graphene are kind of like the same thing, very similar. Charcoal, black, like graphene. It's a carbon-based molecule, like graphene. And funny thing was, when I was in Holland, first time I went there, korfball team, U.S. korfball team. Yeah, we had one real. And I went overseas. Of course, the boys would go out and drink a little bit in Rotterdam. We drank a lot. And the next morning was like, too many beers. I don't know if it was the little ones that were really strong, to Duvals, or the big Bens, the big boot thing that was huge. We tried them all. Anyway, so the next day we had to play against Papendrecht, the number one team in the world. And so I'm sitting there at breakfast. I don't want to eat anything. And this guy comes out. He goes, "You had a good time last night, huh?" Dutch guy. Yeah. He goes, "Here." He opens up this little can, and there's these little black pills, really small. What's that? It's activated charcoal. Take two. You'll feel a lot better. I know. Take two. Trust me. I take two, put it in my mouth, drink the water. 10 minutes. Suddenly my stomach felt better. 30 minutes later, I felt completely better. Like I hadn't, nothing had happened. I remembered this. God said to me, try it. We have some activated charcoal in the house. So I went and I took it, took a spoonful and took a spoon. That was it. And then a few minutes later, the daughter wanted to go out and shoot some basketball. So I decided to go out and sit out with her. Maybe the cool air will help a little bit. By the time I got out there and sat the chair down, gone. Hasn't been back. Charcoal is not only one of the best known components for removing pretty much anything foul. You know, they use charcoal for removing odors. Charcoal filters are the number one for removing toxins and foul odors and even gases, some unwanted gases out of the air. But also, it's also used commonly for filtering media, for extracting heavy metals and impurities from water. It's a very important part of a water purification cartridges. It's a charcoal filter. So what it has, that ability to bind with things that maybe that God has deemed not necessary for the purity. And he's provided this wonderful element, activated charcoal, as a means to assist in binding unwanted heavy metals, unwanted toxins, especially carbon-based toxins in our body. I believe that if people are afraid of this shedding thing, I believe you go to the Sprouts or one of these places and you buy yourself a little bottle of activated charcoal and take a spoonful of it. And you'll be fine. I believe that. I believe that God provides. And if you really want to hyperpower it, bless it when you take it, because it's just in water. So bless the water. Say, clean my body, please. And you know that God has made that promise. And you can use that. God never allows a hurdle to come before us that he doesn't himself place all the means for us to overcome right where we are. We don't have to go looking for it or beg from some high and mighty scientist, or merely have to call out. We merely have to call out and ask God, and he will provide. I love it in Luke, he says, then he called his 12 disciples together and gave them power and authority over devils and to cure diseases. Cure dis-ease in people so that they can come back to ease, to balance. Come back to balance. Look to God. Don't be afraid. Share what you've learned. Share what you learned from David Nino Rodriguez. Share what you learned from Mel K, what you learned from Juan O Seven. And in sharing, it becomes part of you. And it raises your ascension. Raises your vibration. And just like in the last video, the one I did before this, suddenly you're above this stuff. And when you're above it, it can't harm you any more than what was happening in that water could harm Peter the Apostle. And remember, another one of my favorites, everything that Jesus did, we can do. and more because he's with his Father in heaven. That's a promise. And God always keeps his promises. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to post it. I'm going to probably make this as part of my therapeutic. I have a 10-part series, and this dis-ease is an important part. I have actually only got to the 8th show. So of that 10-part, this will be part 9 of that 10-part when I send it on through to David, part of his group that I sent to him. But I will also post it on its own, dealing with disease. Yeah, that's a good one. Dealing with disease. That's a good name. Again, we don't monetize. So if you want to help us, we're trying to open another office up, open our office back up. I had it taken from me so the next time I open, it's going to have to be cash only. And we have our Heal Yourself for God's Sake. You can write to me at posture.is.everything@gmail.com. If you send me the money for the book, I will send you an autographed copy. And this goes the same for the Quantum Ascension book. Both are available on Amazon for now until we switch. We may switch soon. But although Amazon seems to be getting better, maybe since they get rid of the guys that run it, it'll start being better. And yes, we do have a GoFundMe, although we've only had one person ever do anything on it, but still was nice that she did it. Very nice person. And of course, there's Anna's Patriots push that she does with Patriots movement with David Nino Rodriguez. She's working with that. And yeah, I do occasionally, people will call me and want to do direct consultation. I do see patients here locally. But if you are interested in a direct consultation via Zoom, I have to charge for those because I do it during my regular work day, so I have to take off the other patient's time in a couple hours, spend exclusively, but I'd sit and analyze your issue and then evaluate it from a physical therapy standpoint, and then add in the therapeutic aspects of the spiritual therapy and possible therapeutics using mind, body, and spiritual therapy. So if that is interested in you, contact me at posture.is.everything@gmail.com. And again, till the next time, be blessed and try that activated charcoal. Probably be a bad idea. Bless you and take care. Love you guys. Oh, gotta find the off switch here. There it goes.